My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, today we have another Casio edifice for you guys. This is the Casio EFV-130D 7AV UEF. Quite a mouthful there. So I really love these Casio edifice models. They just tend to run larger. However, this one's 42 millimeters. I really like the dial, so I thought, you know what, I'll get it and I'll review it. I think 42 millimeters actually works on a wide variety of wrists. I just tend to like watches more around 40 millimeters. So this one is really growing on me. So I think next week we might do Casio Edifice Showdown 3, and I'll give it a shot at the King, the Casio EFV-130D. You see, this one's 40 millimeters, but you know, as I've been wearing them, and even under the video, you can kind of tell here, this is obviously a bigger watch, but there's a little bit of an optical illusion with the dial. Because this watch is all dial, it does appear to be a little bit bigger, and the bezel, the black bezel kind of makes the dial of this watch look a little bit smaller, which can cause it to look a little bit smaller on wrist as well. So you know what, I might actually show these down next week. We'll decide, and you can let me know in the comments below. So as always, we're going to do specifications, pros, cons, and then if I think this watch is worth the money. But before we begin, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the content of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So starting with the case, we have 42 millimeters in diameter. It's 49 millimeters lug to lug. It's only 11.5 millimeters thick, and then you have a 22 millimeter lug with opening here. And then the finishing on these Casio Edifice cases is always quite good. It's stainless steel. It's brushed along the top. Then you have a slight chamfer, and it transitions into a high polished side. The lugs do slightly turn down, which makes it more comfortable on the wrist. And then you have these telltale kind of Casio Edifice crown guards, these very angular crown guards that they tend to put on a lot of their models. But overall, the cases, the finishing is very good. And then sized up to my wrist, it weighs 119 grams. So if you've owned or handled a Casio Edifice before, you'll be familiar with this bracelet. Very common on many of their models. Brushed on the sides, all high polish in the middle. I prefer all brushed bracelets. They're a little bit less flashy, a little bit more toolish, but this is pretty common, and it just comes down to personal preference. Starts at 22 millimeters, tapers down to 18 millimeters before jumping back up to 20 millimeters on the double push-to-point clasp. Just pressed metal here, but that's what you'd expect at this price point. You do get 4 micro positions. The end links are hollow, and then sizing is accomplished with just standard split pins. Overall, the bracelet it's functional. It's a little bit jingly jangly, but it's what you'd expect at this price point, and I think they're perfectly fine. Very standard case back here for the Casio Edifice. It is a screw-in case back. There's a variety of information here, notably 100 meters of water resistance, which is great to see. And then this is powered by the module 5340, so that's going to be accurate to plus or minus 20 seconds a month, have a 3-year battery life, and it also features the date, which you can quick set. So a nice reliable quartz movement in this watch. So the 5 millimeter screw down crown is signed with the Casio Edifice logo. It's a bit small to operate between those 2 crown guards. I do find it a tad difficult to get purchase on and then set the time and the date. However, this being a quartz watch, hopefully you don't have to operate the watch via the crown that often. So the crystal here is just a flat piece of mineral crystal. I'd love to see sapphire here. I know they can do it because they have Edifice models with sapphire that are very much more expensive than this one. It's just mineral here, so you kind of got to worry about the longevity. It's easier to scratch. I just would love to see sapphire, but that's what you get on this model. So the 120 click unidirectional bezel kind of has a gear cog edge to it. That's pretty cool. And then I really like the insert. Unfortunately, I think it's plastic, so I do worry about snapping or breaking it if you bang it into something. But I like the numerals they have at each of the 5 minutes. They're kind of modern. And I also really like the high contrast between the black bezel and that white dial. The action, while it's tinny, it is actually very consistent, and there's 0 backplay, and everything does line up. And you can see it's quite easy to operate. I'm doing it here under the camera. So while it's not my favorite feeling action in the world, the function of it is great, and I can't complain about it there. So this watch does come in a number of other colorways, but I was really drawn to this white dial. It's a little bit difficult to pick up on camera, but it does have a slight sunburst effect that's more apparent in direct sunlight, but you should be able to see it a little bit here in this light. And then, of course, they have that water resistance 100 meter in blue at the 6 o'clock, and then that blue seconds hand arrow. I just really like that slight splash of color on this otherwise all white and black watch. And then I don't like the triple branding, Edifice, Casio, and the Edifice logo at the 12 o'clock, but they tend to always do that. And then at the 3 o'clock position, you have the date, and it's nicely integrated. They didn't really clip. They clipped about half of the indice, but I think the sizing of it balances out the dial in a nice way. And then the chapter ring is also a nice white, and it did match the dial very well. You have larger dashes for each of the hours, and then smaller dashes for each of the minutes. The handset is high polish and gabled, so it'll catch light on one side or the other. And Casio always does a really good job on their hands and their indices. So the indices are applied and they also have a high polish edge and they catch light in just lots of interesting ways that adds to visual interest of the watch and also makes it very easy to read the time. The minute hand is quite long and it does go almost all the way out to the chapter ring, which is a pet peeve of mine. So I think it's long enough. I approve of this minute hand. And then the hour hand has a little bit of a diagonal dash on it about halfway down to help differentiate it from the minute hand, and then that second hand is nice and long as well and has that blue tipped arrow at the end. So I like the handset, I like the indices, I like the dial. I think it's all very well executed on this watch. It makes for quite a striking combination and high legibility when you go to read the time. Now, the hands and the indices are all lumed. However, I'm not even going to do a lume shot. Casio Edifice Lume is terrible. It doesn't charge quickly, it's not very bright, and it doesn't last. So just know that if you really like to have powerful lume on a watch, this is not going to do it for you. Just assume this watch has no lume when you're making your consideration if you want to pick one up or not. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. You can see the 49mm lug to lug doesn't overhang. And then it's 42mm, but like I said before, a little bit of an optical illusion with that big bezel. It does seem to wear slightly smaller, I think, on my wrist. So I think you can definitely pull this off on a variety of wrist sizes. And then it's quite thin because of that quartz movement. I would just prefer it to be maybe 40mm for my own personal preference, but this is going to work on a large variety of wrist sizes. So pros and cons. Well, starting with the pros, these entry-level Casio Edifice watches, while they have some shortcomings, they really offer a lot of bang for the buck. They're really fun and they're really good watches. I don't have a lot of major complaints for the price you pay for them. And then second, the Casio Edifice models always nail the hands and indices, resulting in very visually interesting and easy to read dials. And then finally, this watch has 100 meters of water resistance and a screw-down crown, which is great, and I don't think you should be afraid to get this one wet. So for the cons, well, I'd be happy to pay 10 to 20% more for this watch if they'd give it a sapphire crystal. It just adds so much more to the durability and longevity of the watch overall to have that sapphire crystal. And then secondly, the same is true for the lume. Just charge a little bit more and do the lume right, or don't do it at all. Maybe just save the money not applying the lume and maybe throw that towards getting a sapphire crystal on this watch. And then third, for this particular model, I'm a little bit worried the bezel insert might break. I think it's made of plastic, and if I catch it on a door handle the wrong way, it might crack. And then of course, my last negative, which is totally subjective to my own taste, is I'd like this to be 2mm smaller, but that's just based on my personal preference. So is this watch worth the money? Well, yes. I think these Casio Edifice models, especially these entry-level ones, are always worth the money, especially if you just wait for a deal. So I think this might be another European model, so I had to pick it up off eBay, and I paid $85. However, if you're patient, a better deal might pop up on one of these. I know I've seen other Casio Edifice models, some of the ones I've reviewed as well, dip to $50 or below occasionally on Amazon. So the only real question when it comes to these is finding the style you like and then waiting for the right deal. I've been consistently impressed with them, and I would just do my really only complaints about these is I'd love to see a sapphire crystal on all of them and better lume on all of them as well. So there you have it, the Casio EFV-130D 7A VUEF. What do you think? Is this a worthy contender to take on the champion in the next Casio Edifice showdown? Let me know in the comments below. And then as always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.